Mr. Volcker's 50 years in finance and public service are characterized by integrity, perseverance, and an overwhelming desire to do the right thing regardless of personal cost. As we emerge from a difficult period in business, beset by scandal and a crisis of confidence, the leadership of exceptional individuals like Mr. Volcker have never been more relevant. Please welcome Mr. Paul Volcker.
Thank you, Mark, and ladies and gentlemen. It's really nice to be back here to see so many friends at Stanford and have George Shultz twist my arm to get out here. It doesn't take much twisting to come back here and upon occasion. But let me say that, there has been an awful lot of good news in the past couple of years about the economy. The American expansion, the expansion of the U.S. economy certainly appears to be on track. And I point out that that is true of most of the Anglo-Saxon world. And the United States in particular has provided a lift to the economy generally. Europe and Japan may lack exuberance, but at least they're on the plus side. And when we look at China and India, with close to 40% of the world's population, they have sustained growth at rates that not so long ago would have seemed highly improbable, if not impossible. And hundreds of millions of their citizens are rising from poverty. But underneath that favorable and placid surface, at least the way I see it, there are some really disturbing trends. Some huge imbalances, some disequilibria, risks, call it what you will. And altogether, the circumstances seem to me as dangerous and as intractable as I can remember. And I can remember quite a lot. What really concerns me is there seems to be so little willingness to understand it and much capacity to do something about it. Now, let me say why I think these things, because I think nothing in our experience has been quite comparable. It's quite clear that while Tom says in one respect, and he was brilliant, that the world is flat, I think it's still true that the world economy today is lopsided. That's not quite new, but the world growth is even more dependent than usual on the United States as the engine of growth. And at the same time, part of the flatness that he was talking about, we've seen a very rapid globalization of financial markets. And I think it's this free flow of capital that's added a new dimension to the world economy. On the one side, it without doubt provides great opportunities, but on the other side, it also poses some great risks. Now, the United States, and increasingly it's true of Euroland as well, are continental-sized economies, well integrated, with stable currencies and confidence in the currencies. And I think those two big economic masses are able to absorb and diffuse the big swings in capital flows that have become characteristic. In fact, both areas are relatively blasé about even big swings in exchange rates. It used to be called benign neglect. And they do, in fact, seem to enjoy more room for maneuver than ever before. They have more room to run deficits. They have more room to borrow. They have more room to lend. Now, it's quite different for emerging economies with relatively small and inherently fragile domestic financial systems. They're in a different position. It seems to me they are particularly vulnerable, and that's been demonstrated to the volatility of world finance. Without strong traditions of monetary stability, and almost by definition, these small emerging economies do not have those strong traditions, both exchange rates and interest rates swing wildly with disturbing consequences for their economy. Now, this isn't a world that fits easily into the models of economic textbooks. They all emphasize equilibrium, efficient markets, orderly adjustment. But we had one big crisis in the developing world and a few close calls in the last decade more broadly. At the moment, it's clear that things seem smooth enough. That's certainly true in the United States. We've had remarkable growth for a decade or more, a surge in productivity, and a sense that I was glad to see repeated frequently this afternoon that inflation is under control. There's been a vast, a really unprecedented accumulation of wealth, real and paper, and certainly in California and elsewhere, housing. So what's not to like? Well, let me suggest just a few things. We sit here absorbed in a debate about how to maintain Social Security and, more importantly, Medicare when the baby boomers retire. But right now, those same boomers are spending like there's no tomorrow. If we can believe the numbers, personal savings in the United States have practically disappeared. Now, it's true that businesses have begun to rebuild their financial reserves, but at the same time, in the space of a few years, the federal deficit has come to offset that particular source of national savings. We're buying a lot of housing at rising prices, but home ownership has become a vehicle for borrowing and leveraging as much as a source of financial security. By past standards, businesses, and particularly manufacturing businesses, aren't investing much. But even so, and I come now to, I think, the heart of the problem, as a nation we are consuming and investing, that is, we are spending about 6% more than we are producing. What holds it all together? High consumption, high leverage, government deficits. What holds it all together is a really massive and growing flow of capital from abroad, a flow of capital that today runs to more than $2 billion a day. The clear lesson I draw, and I'm afraid it's not a very dramatic or innovative lesson, is that there's a high premium on doing what we can to minimize the risks. I know we can't do it all alone, but I know we are the major actor, the necessary solid fulcrum for the world economy. I'm not suggesting anything unorthodox or arcane. What it does require is a willingness to act this year, next year, and the following year, and to act even when on the surface everything seems so placid and so favorable. What I'm really talking about boils down to the oldest lesson of financial policy and central banking, a strong sense of monetary and fiscal discipline. I can't tell you how much pleasure I took in all the people speaking on the platform earlier in emphasizing the importance of one factor underlying their optimistic projections for the American economy and the world economy, and that was the importance of maintaining price stability in the United States.